that may have been slightly affected? And what's the biggest difficulty or challenge you've had to overcome in the past 12 months?
First of all, one of the things about the global pandemic that I said to my staff and to my family the moment I heard how the circumstances in the world changed, I just said I refuse to be a victim to these circumstances. So a victim consciousness is when we allow something in our outer environment to control the way we feel and think. So if I say to you, Jay, why are you so upset today? And you said, oh, it's because of this person or circumstance. What you're really saying is something in my outer environment, some person or some condition is controlling the way I think and feel. Now that's not the truth. That's just a response, right? So anything that controls our thoughts and feelings causes us to be victim to those things. And the stronger the emotion we feel to some circumstance in our life, the more we pay attention to it. And where we place our attention is where we place our energy. So we're giving our life force, we're giving our power away to that circumstance. And so I just made up my mind that it was a great opportunity to get into the cocoon. And I don't think I've been healthier in my life. I mean, I'm usually on 6 different time zones in 4 weeks, running a lot of events, as you said. But I saw it as an opportunity to really self-reflect, to really immerse myself into my own personal work, to redo our website, to redo our brand, to connect more with my staff, to cook my own meals again and work out and use my body and do my walking meditations on the beach. And of course, I've had a fabulous 9 months or so. But I think, I think one of the challenges I think many people have is really the discernment of information. It's really difficult to know what's the truth anymore, just because information is so accessible. And I used to say that in an age of information, ignorance is a choice. And now we have to confront a whole nother level, and that is the information that we're getting. Is it actually supporting us, or is it something that really is an incentive to cause us to make choices? So for me, I think the biggest challenge has been just really an awakening to what kind of information I want to expose myself to. And I think it's now more than ever a challenge for a lot of people in the world.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to hear you say that difference between reacting to our external changes and uncertainty versus responding. We hear that a lot, and then the pandemic comes along and we all feel we have legitimate reasons and true reasons external of us that we can't control to feel a different way. But I've heard you say before that our thoughts can make us sick. And that always sticks with me. Like whenever I think of you saying that always sticks with me. What are some of the challenging thoughts that we've all developed in the last 12 months that you think are affecting how we feel?
First of all, every time we have a thought, we make a chemical. And if you have an unlimited thought, you will feel unlimited. And if you have a self-depreciating thought, you'll feel unworthy. And your brain instantaneously fires circuits that signal another part of the brain to release peptides or chemical messengers that signal hormonal centers. And when we get that arousal from the thought that we think, those thoughts sometimes weaken, the response weakens the physical body. So it turns out that the emotions that are created from the thoughts are the signaling mechanisms of the body. Thoughts are the language of the brain, and feelings are the language of the body, and how we think and how we feel creates our state of being. So it turns out that the thoughts based in the stress hormones, based in survival, those are the thoughts that begin to push the genetic buttons that create disease. In other words, a person wakes up in the morning, and the brain is a record of the past. The first thing they do when they wake up in the morning is they start thinking about their problems. And those problems are memories that are etched in the brain that are connected to certain people, certain objects, certain things at certain times and places. So if you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, the moment you think about your problems, you're thinking in the past, right? Now, every one of those problems has an emotion associated with them because we've experienced them. So the moment you remember your problems, now you feel unhappy, now you feel anxious, now you feel fear. So the moment we feel those emotions, it takes a thought and a feeling.
He would probably think it was a fantasy.
Yeah.
And it really is in a way. because that's where it starts. It starts as an MC. Oh yeah, it's such an enormous change from the lifestyle that I came from. Yeah.
There are even things that are in existence now that weren't in existence when you were 10.
For sure.
Right?
Almost everything that we are used to using every day.
Yeah. So incredible.
In fact, it was after I moved to Toronto. It was right after the Second World War. I moved to Toronto during the war. It was in 1944. My grandfather came to stay with us. My dad had been in Europe in the war. And he brought my grandfather to stay with us for a while. And my grandfather saw an ad in a magazine for a ballpoint pen. That was the first ballpoint pen I ever saw. There were none. You had to load your pen with ink, and they were always leaking, or you had an inkwell on your desk. I know that sounds like 1,000 years ago, but that's the way it was. Every time I see a ballpoint pen, I think of him. And it skipped all over the place. You write and miss, didn't have a good flow to it. It certainly changed it.
Certainly changed it, and so many things have changed. Bob, I think of you as a 20-something-year-old with your job at the fire station. Now here's the thing, I mean, if we're being honest, it's kind of a miracle you even got that good of a job at the fire station, right?
Well, I'll tell you, they probably had 2,000 or 3,000 applications. You had to weigh 160 pounds. I weighed 135 pounds. You had to have high school education. I had 2 months high school education. You know, they say it pays to know somebody. I didn't even know this man. The Magistrate Lynn, lived 2 doors up from my mother. And I thought, I wonder. And I saw the ad in the paper, and I went and asked him. I said I was going to put in an application for the fire department, and I was wondering if there's anything he could do to help me. I think he was flattered that I asked him. He said, well, come on in, son. He took me in the living room. He sat down. He got on the phone and phoned Bill Allen, who was the reeve or the mayor of East York, where I was. I thought I was on the fire department. They were hiring about 21 people. I was one of them.
I mean, you must have felt like you won the lottery in a way,
no question.
getting that.
Well, I'll tell you, I was working in a service station, pumping gas and changing oil for $1 an hour. I'd work 6 days a week, and once a month I'd work 7. So I was earning $48 a week. And I went on the fire department. I was working 7 days and 7 nights a month, because there was only 2 shifts. And I started at $100. So I doubled my pay, and I cut my hours almost in half.
What was its size when your father died?
It had about 6,000 people on a Sunday. It's still a large church, but I never dreamed of.
Well, how did it grow? What happened?
Well, you know, it's interesting, Larry. I don't know how to put my finger on it. You know, I was 40 years younger than my dad, and I think all of a sudden a young minister was up in front of a large congregation. My dad had a local television program, and then I was on there, and you know, it just seems like people took on me. Maybe it's just coming through a younger voice.
Did you have, once it started, a natural affinity for preaching?
I think that I was, you know, even though I was nervous and not, you know, I didn't really know a lot what I was doing, somehow I had a connection with the audience. That's all I can say, not bragging on me, but it's just something, I didn't know I had it, but I thought, you know, the church is growing, people are coming, so I don't know what it was.
How would you classify your type of evangelist? Our good friend Billy Graham, who I've been close to for years, he preaches, you know, come down, be saved, turn yourself over to the Lord, give yourself up for God. You don't do that.
Well, I do it some, but he did that full time, like we'd call it in our circles an evangelist.
Right.
You're
not an evangelist?
No, I'm more a pastor, because I'm talking a lot of times to the same people. So what I talk about is, how do you live the Christian life? In other words, how do I forgive? Or how do I have a good attitude? Or how do I reach my dreams? I like to talk about, you know, how do we live out the Christian faith and not just...
You don't do revivals?
No, not necessarily.
Now, your fan base is not just Christian, right? I understand you have Muslims, even atheists. How do you explain that?
You know,
Why would an atheist be a fan?
well, I think what they like, Larry, is when, you know, the principles that we teach are from the scripture, but they can help anybody, you know, to reach dreams or to forgive or to have a healthy, you know, good self-image. So, you know I'm not a traditional pastor in terms of I'm just going down teaching scripture by scripture, because a lot of what I would teach would just be more how to live a great life.
What is winning?
Winning is not about the trophy and the accolades. It's about the grind. It's about the obstacles. It's about the challenges. It's about the pain that you endure along the way for that 30 seconds of being able to either stand on the platform, be acknowledged by individuals that are close to you. But when that happens, your mind has to immediately shift back, because now you felt and tasted something that you could only get through winning. Are you willing to do it again?
Over and over and over. You've trained some of the greatest of the greats: Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Charles Barkley, Dwayne Wade. I mean, just the Hall of Fame is chock-a-block, as my wife would say, with people that you have trained. So you know something about winning. You know something about sustained winning over time. Why do you call it the unforgiving race to greatness?
Well, it's interesting that you said that I know about winning. The reason I know so much about winning is because I've had to deal with so much losing.
That's interesting. What do you mean by that?
Everybody wants to win, but in order to know how to win, you gotta know how to lose, because you're gonna lose more than you're gonna win. But every time you lose, what do you gain from it? So every time I've lost, people say, you gotta jump right back up. You know, get back right on your feet again. And I disagree with that. After you lose, or when you get knocked down, stay down there for a minute. Understand why you lost. What were the reasons? Why are you down here? Why did you lose? Why did you get knocked down? Because if you just jump right back up, you're gonna lose again and again, and you continue going to lose the same way. So every time I lost, I stayed down for a second. Minutes, hours, days, weeks. But when I stood up, I was different. I was smarter. And when I lost again, I stayed down. I stood back up. I was stronger. When I lost again, I stayed down. How did I stand up again? I was more confident. Lost again. Stood up. I was more resilient. Now you start putting the pieces that are necessary to win over and over and over again. So if you lose and you jump right back up and you haven't really changed, really changed from that loss, you're never going to learn from it, and you're never going to really, truly know the unforgiving race to greatness, because that's part of the unforgiving part, is the losing part. That part is unforgiving.
I've heard you say, it's so funny how often you give me the chills. I heard you say that, people will tell you, hey, you just lost. You need to look in the mirror and you'll see the reason that you lost. And you said that's not true. It's what you don't see in the mirror is why you lost. I have the chills again. What does that mean? What is it that people don't see?
It's what's really inside of them. So what they're seeing, when they look in the mirror, they're just trying to see what's on the surface. But winning and losing wants to know what's inside of you. It wants to know what makes you tick. It wants to know what your desires are. It wants to know what your ego is. It wants to know what your limitations are. It wants to know what your mindset is. It wants to know everything about you, because winning does not lie. when you look in the mirror, you can lie and see what's on the surface. You cannot lie what's going on inside. And that's what people are not willing to see, the lies that are truly going on inside of them that are not allowing them to win over and over, or sometimes even win once. You have to look, winning requires you to go so far deep inside yourself. It's way beyond the surface. It's way beyond internal. It's going to a place that a lot of people haven't visited in a long, long time because they're afraid to visit that person, because when they visit that person, they don't know who that person is anymore.
Does this have to do with not wanting to recognize your weaknesses?
It's not wanting to not only recognize your weaknesses, it's not wanting to acknowledge them, not to work on them, not to face them, and also what you have to do to change them. People will point out your weaknesses, but there's a big difference between your weaknesses and your flaws. Your flaws are your gifts, and people are so busy trying to deal with their flaws and change their flaws when their flaws are actually allows them to stay in that race.
Tell us about your road in life, Jim Rohn. Tell us about your path. How did we get here today?
Well, I started out in Idaho farm country, and when I was 25 years old, I got introduced to health and nutrition and became a distributor. And with the protein drinks and the vitamins and the minerals.
And the name of that company was?
NutriBio.
NutriBio.
Bob Cummings, the old movie star, was part of that company. And so I was a distributor for several years, finally became an executive, took the product to Canada, and finally, from that experience, went into giving public seminars. And I did that for several years, and I was doing one of those seminars in Los Angeles 30 plus years ago. And in my audience was a young man, 19 years old, and his name was Mark Hughes. So, what an incredible day for me. Chance to meet Mark Hughes. We became good friends, and I showed him what I was doing, the product I was selling, and he said, I want to do something similar. He had some other experiences that he went through, and I was there. But I watched him as he finally put the products together. And I was there when he recruited the first distributors in 1980, almost 30 years ago. And I've been here ever since.
What do you think Mark learned from you?
Part of it was marketing, a good marketing structure, and of course the value of the products, it being in health and nutrition. And then he said, what I want to include is not only good nutrition and people using the products, a good marketing structure where they can do well if they want to represent the company, but also what you have been teaching me before I started the company, and that's personal development. That the ultimate goal in life is not what you get, but what you become.
A battle for territory.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
That the things that you get in life, Frederick Douglass said, we might not get everything that we fight for, but everything we get, it will be a fight. And I love the quote that life is a fight for territory. And once you stop fighting for what you want, what you don't want will automatically take over. Like getting ready to come here to see you. I want to just, first of all, thank you for the great work that you're doing. I watch you and I study you, and you have had some incredible guests, impacted my life. And preparing to come here, I'm being treated by Cancer Centers of America for fourth stage cancer, which have been kicking cancer's butt for 27 years. And I've been working on getting a six-pack before getting here. I still got one pack. And I've been working to get some muscles so I can wear my t-shirt, but they weren't large enough, so I wore a long sleeve.
That's amazing, man. Talk to me about cancer. You've had such an upbeat attitude about it. It's really pretty extraordinary. Was that your initial reaction? Did you go through a trough of despair when you first got diagnosed? Like, how have you framed that?
Dr. Alfred Golson, who has since passed, was a very unusual guy. And he told me, he said, Mr. Brown, you have cancer. I said, can you give me a second opinion? He said, yes, and you're ugly too. I said, oh my God. So I didn't have a chance to have fear because those 3 words, you have cancer, 3 of the most feared words in 7 different languages. I saw it as a fight. And from that time to this time, my PSA was 2,400. That's central prostate specific antigen, and now it's below 0 and metastasized to 7 areas of my body, which was a good thing because 7 is my lucky number. Okay, so I never was fearful that I was going to die from it, and I think that I read something by Dr. Norman Cousins. He wrote a book called The Biology of Hope, and he talked about the fact that when something happens to you, you don't deny it, you defy it. And I was defiant that I'm going to beat this, I'm going to handle this. That there are people who many times when something happens to them, that they embrace it from a place of fear and it takes them out. And L.C. Robinson said, things may happen to you and things may happen around you, but the most important things are the things that happen in you. And you have to stand up inside yourself and deal with it and handle it. So fortunately, that never bothered me, but I had sciatica pain. That had me speaking in unknown tongues. And I was in a wheelchair for several months, speaking from a wheelchair. And it was something that I dealt with that frightened me. Will this ever end? It was 24 hours. I lost a lot of sleep. It was exhausting, going from all types of specialists in and out of the country. And just one day, it stopped. And I'm glad that I'm past that, I feel like when you go through some stuff, there's some certain things that you don't want ever to see again, and that's what I don't want to ever see again. But fear has not been the biggest challenge that I've faced with the things that I've been dealing with in terms of my health.
What are some of the rules of leadership that you wanted to get across in the new field manual?
So what happens is, with extreme ownership, with the dichotomy of leadership, we get these principles across people, and we did it in the most simple, straightforward possible way that we could, which is we tell a war story, we tell what the principle is, and then we show an example from the business world. And I'm saying we because I wrote these books with a buddy of mine, Leif Babin, that I was in the SEAL teams with. And so that's what we did, and it's pretty straightforward, but we have a consulting company too. So as we go around and talk to people, we start hearing questions, and then I have a podcast and people send me questions all the time. And these questions are really about how do I take these principles, because they get the principles, they can explain the principle, they can quote you the principle, but then they get faced with a problem and they don't understand how to actually apply the principle. So on my podcast, I was answering these questions all the time of, hey, what do I do when my boss wants all the credit? What do I do? And what do I do when I've got a young individual that has a lot of potential, but they're not really taking advantage of it? They're not motivated to make things happen. What do I do then? And question after question after question after question. And I realized, okay, I need to actually put these principles in a field manual that people can pragmatically take the lessons, take the principles, and apply them to what's happening in the world. And that's what I try to do in the new field manual.
Gratitude is one of the most overlooked and key principles to your success. If your goal is to be a millionaire, and you start out making $20,000 a year, and then God gets you to 50, but you mad because you ain't a millionaire. Well, hold up, man. Do you not remember that just a minute ago you didn't have but 20? So you got to show gratitude for the 50. Then somehow, by the grace of God, you get to 150. It's people making 150 who used to be dead broke, mad because they not a millionaire. Hold up, partner. Do you remember when you was just making the 50? Now you done triple that, and you got to understand that there's joy in the journey. So if you don't show the proper amount of gratitude, you're never gonna be happy, you're never gonna be content, and after a while, man, God gonna get tired of you. It's like if somebody come over your house and borrow a cup of sugar every day. Every day somebody come to your house and ask you for a cup of sugar. And you give it to them and they walk away and don't ever say thank you. How many times can this cat come to your house and get this sugar without saying thank you to you before you as a human being go, yo, my man, you come here every day and I give you this cup of sugar. You ain't said thank you one time. Don't come by here no more. But through God's grace and mercy, he allowed us to keep coming back. But suppose you were grateful though. Maybe one time you go to God and ask for another 150 and he give you 500 because you didn't show gratitude. Maybe sometimes when the guy that kept coming by your house asking for the cup of sugar, if he would show gratitude, maybe you go, hey man, here go a 5-pound sack of sugar. That way you ain't got to come back tomorrow. But if you never show the gratitude, you never become the recipient of the grace. And the grace is what you need on top of that helps you get to the next level and take you place. My wife asked me the other day, because I just turned 65, right? And I was talking to my wife and I said, baby, I was just kind of got a little throwed off a little bit, because even I'm human, you know, I got a little throwed off. I said, baby, I just turned 65 and I really was wanting a little bit more to be popped off by now. She said, wait a minute, hold up, Steve. Wait a minute, hold up. She said, wait a minute, let me ask you something. When you was 30, where did you see yourself at 65? I said, well, I ain't see this. She said, exactly. She said, so you can want all you want, but you need to go outside and just drive around and go get in some of your cars and see how you fly and just take a look around, and I think you'll be all right. And I went on and sat down.